Good afternoon. My name is Jim Warren. Welcome to TXAPA's Fall Focus. We are glad to have you guys here today. We are focused on ethics today, and that will be the soul of our program today. And we've got Lance Kinney, the Executive Director of the Texas Board of Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors, here with us today. So we're going to get Lance started here in just a couple of minutes. This month, in addition to having our fall focus on a number of issues, we're also focusing on our future, which is our scholarship program. And that program helps change lives. And you can donate to texasasphalt.org/2020donate. And we'd love to take your money because this money goes right to scholarships. And I wanted to recognize our donors so far this year. Angel Brothers and Century Asphalt are our benefactor levels. Anderson Columbia is at championship level. Our patrons include A.L. Hellcamp and Longview Asphalt. And we've got a slew of sponsors: HNTB, Lahoast, Elman Makata, Power Screen Texas, Jebro Inc., and Road Tech, and also Cutler's on board as well. So thank you so much. Right off the start from Steve, we've got $67,300 have been donated so far. And so we are excited to hear that. Today's focus is on ethics. And again, Lance Kinney will be here, and he's going to start here as soon as I shut up and get out of the way. But I'm going to do our safety share first. And our safety share today is on sharing school zones. You know, school has gotten a late start this year, and some students are actually just starting here this week and next week. So they've had a time at home, and now they're having to make that option to go into school. So let's talk about that. A new school year is almost here, but going back to school during COVID is going to be a very different experience for parents and students alike. But one thing that will never change is the importance of practicing safe driving in school zones. Here are some tips to keep our students and yourself safe. Number one, expect the unexpected. More children are injured by cars in September than any other month. Children crossing streets around schools do not always cross at the crosswalk, so slow down and keep an eye out for children and pedestrians in school zones. Never pass a vehicle stopped for pedestrians, as small, unseen children could run out in front of your vehicle at the last second. You certainly don't ever want to have to deal with that. If you're a daily commuter and not a parent picking up or dropping off your child, avoid school zones if you can. Obey the law. It's illegal to use a cell phone or any other handheld devices while driving in a school zone in Texas. Police in Texas no longer give out warnings. You'll receive a $200 to a $400 ticket. That'll catch your day. Be aware of school zones, changes in speed limits, and times of enforcement. Faster driving means longer stopping distance. Day like today, it's wet out, so now you've even got a longer stopping distance. At 20 miles an hour on a dry pavement, it takes an average vehicle almost 70 feet to come to a total stop, nearly double that distance for just 10 miles per hour more. Always stop for a school patrol officer or a crossing guard holding a stop sign. It's illegal to pass through a guarded, occupied crosswalk in a school zone. Lastly, share the road with school buses. When the school bus is stopped with a stop sign out and lights flashing, come to a complete stop until the bus lights are no longer flashing, the bus is moved, or the driver signals it's okay to pass. The area 10 feet around the school bus is the most dangerous for children. Stop far enough back to allow them space to safely enter and exit the bus. Never tailgate a bus. Keep a safe distance of 2 car lengths between yourself and the bus. I'd say a little bit more than that. Buses make frequent stops. Stop at railroad tracks and do not turn red on right. Motorists can make a big difference by remembering to drive with extra caution when driving in and around school zones. Driving at slower speeds and paying attention may very well save a life. So that is our safety share for today. So again, we're focused on ethics today. I'm going to bring you up, Lance, and there you are, and welcome you aboard. I'm glad to have you here.
Glad to be here. Sorry, it's just going to be online instead of in person, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you know, we're doing the best we can with what we got, right? And
exactly.
we're just thrilled to have you guys here. And just remember, as Lance gets his PowerPoint fired up, you can go ahead and ask a question at any time. Lance has been with TXAPA for a number of years doing these programs, these ethics programs, and we've got 125 people on board already, Lance. So that's
Wow.
we may bust another record today. So I'm going to go ahead and shut up, get out of the way, and let you drive the bus for a while, and I'll break in if we get a question. So let her rip, buddy.
All right. Well, if I'm driving the bus, you got to be careful, right? We just sort of learned about that. So thanks everybody for joining with us today, and I'll be going through our ethics presentation. Once again, my name is Lance Kinney. I'm the Executive Director for the Board of Engineers and Land Surveyors. I'll give a little more update on that merger. It's in the presentation today, and I noticed, like you said, the number is 125, maybe growing up from that. I know I'd like to think it's so y'all want to come see me, but I'm sure it's because you want to get your ethics hour. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, our ethics updates and other things that are going on. If you've seen one of our presentations before, you know there's quite a bunch of different things in here. So it does meet the requirements for your ethics hour for continuing ed. There's ethics in here, but we're going to talk about other items on here too. I'm going to give you an update of what's been going on with the agency as it relates to COVID and the pandemic. Let you know what's been changing and things like that. A little bit about the board and how it's changed recently. Then the ethics piece, if you will, in the middle is talking about the functions of licensing and enforcement and how the agency and how you participate in all those activities. At the end, I'll come in and talk about the merger, what's been happening, what hasn't been happening, and then board activities if there's any time left. I do have a tendency to talk fast, so I'll try and keep it to a dull roar here as we go through it, but these are the things we're going to talk about today. I'm going to go back a slide, and one of the first things in the corner, as you can see, it's PELS board. The front slide talked about engineers and land surveyors merging. How to get hold of us and how to check out all the things I've already talked about a little bit is we changed our URL. It used to be engineers.texas.gov for many, many, many years. It's now PELS.texas.gov. The old ones will work for a little while longer, but we'll want to get everybody used to changing the address if you're trying to get hold of us or check out our website. We're also on several social media platforms, not posting all the time, but updates as needed. You can generally get those links through our website, so that'd be a good test there. I'm going to change slides, so they're not going to be here too much longer, but check us out, follow along if you're so inclined. I'll get into some of the content here. The first thing is the COVID update. It's going to take a couple of minutes, but I want to kind of share what's been happening with the agency, how it relates to your license, and other things that are going on with the pandemic. So ever since March, when the pandemic really started to hit its peak there, we closed the agency offices to the public. And we sent our team home to work via teleworking, which probably many of you were doing something similar to that. But I just want to let you know the agency offices itself here in Austin is closed to the public. So if you came down here and were looking for people or wanted to knock on the door or talk to someone, that's not happening. We do occasionally have some folks in the building. Like right now, I'm actually broadcasting from our boardroom. But it's on an as-needed basis with a limitation for occupancy, and that's to keep our staff safe, and it's close to the public to keep you safe and the same kind of thing. So we have a rolling date. I've been throughout the summer saying we're closed at least through June, July. Now we're out to October. In all practicality, it'll probably be through the end of the year or further, but we're just letting folks know. You can still stop by. We have a mail slot. If you wanted to drop something off, you can pay your renewal, or if you're applying or someone in your office is applying or needs to get us information, you can slide it through the door. But as far as being able to contact a person physically, that's not happening. As I mentioned, the team is teleworking. We were able to transition very quickly. I have to thank the team for their digging in and getting this done, their massive flexibility in making this kind of thing happen. And to be honest, these webinars that we've given over the years really set us in a good position to be able to telework. We had a lot of the equipment and we had the expertise with our team to be able to switch over very quickly. Now, because of teleworking, our team is available, but generally electronic communications will be best. I've heard from some people that said, I've been calling the office and can't get hold of anybody. Well, I would say see bullet number one. People are not necessarily in the office. We have phone access to some extent, but it's really the easiest way is emailing us. So if you have a direct email, if you know my address, that kind of thing, email me, no problem. Info@PELS is our kind of clearinghouse. Something comes in and it gets distributed where it needs to go. Just want to pass that along. We do check the general voicemail, but you're not going to get a live human most of the time. We're looking, because of the pandemic going on as long as it is, we may switch that over a little bit, but electronic communication is best for everything there. Other than that, though, operations are considered normal. air quotes, whatever that means these days. But what it means to me is we're able to process all of your PE and RPLS applications just like we were before. And those numbers are just the same as they were. The pandemic has really not slowed that down. So we're able to go through those just as we were before all this. Handling our enforcement cases. We're doing investigations. We're contacting folks to get information. We've even had quite a number of hearings, all via Zoom. So we're able to handle those kind of things all the way up to the State Office of Administrative Hearings. We've had online case hearings there. So cases are still moving forward and investigative things are still happening. So let us know if something's going on out there and we'll keep moving forward. Renewals are ongoing. We've already gone through 2 renewal cycles. For engineers, you know, you do it quarterly. So March was right at the very beginning of the pandemic and we were able to hit that mark really well and everybody was able to renew. Because it was already online, it wasn't a big change there. June was one we were more concerned about because there were a number of people, at least 3 months the pandemic had been going on and people had been in lockdown and issues about getting continuing education. But as you see here with TXAPA and other people, we've been able to make that switch very effectively and provide these seminars and conventions and all kinds of things online. So June was able to make it happen. Right now we're in the September renewal group, which is at least half the year people have been having to do things online. And we've found that everybody's able to get their continuing ed hours, their ethics hour like right now. So we're keeping those things moving forward. Renewals are happening just like they were and nothing has changed in that effect. The next thing I want to mention, and obviously if you're already a PE, you don't have to worry about your exams anymore, but you may have people in your office, you may have young people in your family or someone you know that's still working toward becoming a PE or becoming an RPLS. And I'm telling you so you understand the situation that's been going on with the examinations. As you know, they're a major part of becoming a licensed professional engineer or a surveyor. And at the beginning of the pandemic in March, the next thing up was the April exams. Many of y'all remember going and sitting in a convention center somewhere around the state with 800 of your best friends and taking that pencil and paper test in April. There was a big crisis at that point. Everything was being shut down, locked down, and there was a lot of concern. And due to the speed of all that, NCAAS, the national organization that works up the exams, had to shut those April exams down. As well, computer-based testing, we've switched the FE exam for the last over 5 years. The FE exam has been computer-based testing delivered and through Pearson VUE, a private third-party vendor, and they give lots of tests all over the nation for lots of different disciplines. They also shut their doors due to the various orders from state of Texas or any of the other states they were operating in. So Pearson VUE closed for a while in April too. So there were no FE exams given for several weeks and months. The FS and PS exams for surveyors were also not available. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the PE exam, the paper and pencil one, was the first time, and I've been with the board for 18 years, I'd never heard of the exam being canceled. It was shut down. There was no April exam. Pearson VUE is reopening location by location. So there are people who are taking the FE exam or the FS exam or any of the other computer-based delivered exams in Texas. If you know someone in your office or you have someone in your family that's looking to take the test, I recommend that they start booking their appointment now or as soon as possible. Pearson VUE is doing a really good job with hygiene and other safety protocols related to the pandemic. So they have reduced capacity so that half or fewer of people can take the test before. Some locations are not open for various reasons. So you'll have to kind of book and schedule what you can as soon as you can. But people are getting it done, and Pearson VUE does get to prioritize engineering and surveying as essential businesses as far as that goes. So my recommendation is try and find the locations nearest to you and schedule those exams as soon as you can. Now, and I'll also put a little caveat or an asterisk here. All these things are as of right this second, 2:15 today, because with the pandemic, as we all know, things change. So please try and make all this happen the best you can. We're working with everyone as best we can as well. So that was the April exam, shut down, no PE exams given. In Texas also, with the merger, now we are responsible for giving the surveyor exam, the equivalent of the PE exam. That is not a national exam, that is Texas only. We did the same thing, shut it down for April. We couldn't get a system up and running as well as all the different restrictions for April. It was just not safe. The October exams for the PE and the surveyor exams are scheduled to happen. Okay, so the interesting thing here is from an engineering optimization standpoint is we now have restrictions on the number of people who can go to any one site, and we have more people than we've ever had before. We have the standard October volume as well as the April volume that did not get to take their test or trying to roll into October. Completely understandable. So now we've got more flow coming into a restricted environment. The interesting thing here, NCAAS has been working with state boards and everybody that they can to accommodate this new and unprecedented situation. So what they've done, a couple things that are very interesting. Normally the PE exam is given on one day, right? That's what I said. You go into the convention center with everybody and you take the PE exam in that one day. They are now switching it to 2 days. Okay, so that gives you not double the capacity, but more capacity than you had before. And they're not breaking disciplines in half. In other words, if you're a civil, you don't get to take it Thursday or Friday, but they'll have, say, electricals, mechanicals, and environmental on day 1, civils and something else on day 2. Once again, the idea is they're following all the protocols, 6 foot plus spacing, masks, sanitizing, all that kind of stuff, everything we can to keep everybody safe. But in that process, we're changing capacities and whatnot. So NCAA has switched to 2 days of the exams. If you do have someone in your office or someone else taking the PE exam, all those dates and all that information will be given to you. I'm not going to try and tell you now in this webinar and either have it changed or maybe incorrect. So get your info straight from NCAAS. They'll be giving all that information to your examinees. So location and date and time, that's all given from them, but it's been worked out. A couple other things that they were looking to do, or excuse me, are doing is, so the PE exams are given in April and October. For the first time that I've ever known this to happen, they have been able to schedule a number of sites around the United States for a January exam for civils only. And the idea is the civil exam is the biggest group of people, and they wanted to give people options either if they didn't want to take an October exam yet, or if there were just too many folks. They're giving people who are scheduled for the October exam an opportunity to take a one in January. This has already been communicated to those who are eligible to do so, and there are a very limited number of sites. It is not being given this way around the United States. I think it's like 10 or a dozen sites. Luckily in Texas, there is one in Houston. So once again, you'll have been notified of this, but I want to let people know in case someone in your office says, hey, I'm taking the PE exam in January. It doesn't sound as crazy as it is. It's an additional time. So for civils, there's a third PE exam. One other thing for anyone who's out there who's a double E power person who's taken that exam, slowly the PE exams over time have been switched to computer-based testing. The next one up for 2021 was double E power. They were able to accelerate that timeline and converted it to computer-based testing. So they took it from the in-person group that would be in October at the hotels and convention centers and moved it to the year-round computer-based testing at Pearson VUE. So those folks have been notified that they're not going to take their exam in October, but to schedule starting in December. So once again, a lot of details, a lot of specifics, but long story short, October exam's going on. It's 2 days long. There is a third civil for January, and some of the double E's have switched. So once again, trying to work the capacity problem, keep everybody safe and everything going as best it can. I see your hand there.
Just a quick question. Have they set a date for the PE exam to go online?
Oh, for the yes,
civil,
a lot
for
of
civil.
Yeah, the civil. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it is scheduled to be the last one to switch over as the largest volume. Essentially, they're taking off all the pieces and at the end move that last chunk over. The number that rings in my head is 2023 or 2024. So they're phasing through. They're doing 1 or 2 a year. They may, given everything now, step on the gas, but we'll have to see where that ends up. So that's the exams. Once again, long story to get to all that point, but I wanted to share that with everybody so you're fully aware of what's going on. We are working as close as we can to get everybody what they need. The next one here is continuing ed. We get emails about this regularly, not a lot, but regularly. And to the point that I made a minute ago, a lot of people, a lot of organizations, a lot of vendors are moving or have moved their courses to online delivery. Due to necessity, also just due to general technology and availability. That has happened over the summer. Early in the year, we were not sure this was going to happen, so we were considering modifications to the continuing ed requirements. However, it seems through the cycles we've already gone through and the information we're getting from folks that getting your time, getting your classes, getting the information you need is possible and available. So we have not made a modification to continuing ed requirements. This is not just the engineering board in Texas. This is engineering boards nationwide, as well as other boards in different disciplines. People have been able to be flexible and make these things available. So we're not making a change. So as it stands, it's still 15 hours. It's still 1 hour of ethics, and you can have the whole thing be online if you want, but that requirement will remain the same. And that goes for engineers and surveyors. We did not make a change there. The last thing we did make a change, and this has to do with a special kind of rulemaking. We worked with the governor's office to accommodate an emergency rule, which just means it was immediately put in place and lasts for half a year based on the pandemic specifically. But what happened is the April exam being canceled, just completely out of everyone's hands, something that needed to happen, and they shut it down. Well, when you sign up to take the exams or you fill out your application, you have a certain amount of time you have to complete that process. Some people were about to time out in April. And so the situation was given that those people, through no fault of their own, were about to just time out. They either had taken it and not passed it or had something else come up. So they were about to time out. So we worked with the governor's office and we passed an emergency rule here at the board to extend everybody who was in the exam loop their due date by a year. Once again, early in the year when we worked on this, we weren't even sure what October is going to bring, and hopefully everything will come off without a hitch. But once again, you never know. So right now, all PE applicants who are in the loop have an additional year, and they've all been notified of that effect as well. So once again, we're thinking of everything we can to make sure that the services we deliver and the things we need to get out there for PEs and RPLSs that we can do within reason. So those are the big COVID change updates as of right now. I'm going to switch over into a little bit about the board and how the board itself has changed. As you know from my previous presentations or other things, we're a state agency. Some people think we're an association, but we're a state agency. Our board of governors, our board of directors is appointed by the governor of the state. And prior to our merger with the land surveying, we had 9 members, 6 of which were PEs and 3 were public members. We think that's a very good way to regulate a profession like this with expertise of the members from different parts of the state and different parts of the profession, as well balanced with 3 public members with the voice of the public and health, safety, and welfare in mind as well. So that's what it was before. When we brought in the surveyor board and merged together, the legislature changed our composition a little bit. And there's no quiz on this, but here are some numbers. We've switched from 6 to 5 PEs, added a professional land surveyor onto the board. So once again, keeping 6 professionals balanced with 3 public members. We've gained a 10th member. This is an ex officio representative from the General Land Office. This person has to do with public lands and surveying. This person is non-voting. So we have 10 board members, 9 of which can vote. The 9 are appointed by the governor and 1 is assigned from the GLO. So the structure has changed a little bit. Most people won't see this. It doesn't have a big impact, but I want to let you know everything that's happening with the agency. These are our members. So we've got now, for a while in the year, we had not gotten additional members as needed, but they've appointed Colleen Johnson. She was previously on the surveying board to be the surveyor member. Mark Neugebauer is the GLO person. The rest of the board members are listed here. One interesting, just fun fact, if you will, is Dr. McClinton Stoglin was appointed during the pandemic, and she's been trained up and actually attended and participated in our May and August board meetings, but we've never met her in person. She was appointed completely virtually, and so she's our virtual board member at this moment. But we've been able to switch all of our processes, and we have Zoom board meetings now. You can, if you participate, you would come in through Zoom. If you're just want to watch our board meetings, they're live streamed via YouTube. So we've actually had more people participate in board meetings than ever before, because before they were in the office in the building. One other thing that happened early in the year was our prior chair, Dr. Daniel Wong, had served for over a dozen years with the board and been chairman. And when we did a lot of our changes over, the governor appointed a new chair. And so we thank Dr. Wong for all of his service. And I would say welcome Dr. Nejad, but this has been over 9 months. So he'd already been with the board for a full 6-year term. He was reappointed, and Dr. Nejad is now the chair. I thank him for his leadership, because at first it was the big issue, of course, was the merger between engineers and surveyors. And then surprise, pandemic appears, and so he's been helping make sure that the board continues to function through all this. So our board members have been massively flexible, and we're still doing everything from the outside perspective as we have been before. I want to shout out real quick here to my team. I've got 36 people officially on the rolls, but 32 are working. We got some spots to fill. These are the other directors. You know, the bosses always get the slide, but the main thing I want to say is that the team has been working very well, very flexible to get everything done. And really from the outside, from your perspective, if you try and contact us or work with the agency, I think the customer service is the same as it was before, and we're getting everything done for all of our constituents and customers. So thank the team. They're doing an excellent job letting me come in and give presentations like this while they get everything done. Okay, all of that out of the way, I'm going to switch into a little bit of our ethics piece, the chunk in the middle. So this one has a little bit of an explanation here. This is the mission statement for the agency. And anyone who's worked with an organization has probably at some point been involved, or at least had one delivered to you, had a mission statement involved. And they're dry and they're kind of long, and they give you this big high level description of what you're supposed to be doing. So this is ours. And while I'm sure you're like, wow, that's interesting, I think there's a lot to this, and that's why I want to share it with everybody. In my opinion, this is, of course, my mission. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what our agency is supposed to do. But as I'll describe in a minute, because of the way everything is structured, this is actually your mission statement. This is what you as a PE are supposed to be doing. And I'll describe what I'm talking about here in a second and how the agency and the professionals mesh together. So public health, safety, and welfare is the key to the whole thing. Has been forever. That's the reason we're around, but this is the key to the deal. So our mission is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Texas. I could put a period there. That could be the entire thing, and we could just talk about that for the next 45 minutes. So this is the mission of the agency. But more than that, it's the mission of every single PE licensed in the state. That should be your underlying ethical driver for everything you're doing. I understand in your job you have the actual task in front of you, the report, the analysis, the design, all those things. And that's what you focus on. But you should always have in the back of your mind, am I protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Texas, of the people on the roads, of the people utilizing whatever it is I'm doing? It's in your hands, right? The expectation when people go outside and use all the infrastructure around the state is that it's all fine. And in almost every case, it is. And that's because of the hard work you do. So keeping the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Texas in your mind is key. And how does the agency do that? Well, we do it through the licensure and registration of qualified individuals. So we have to build a system that licenses and registers PEs and surveyors. We do the tests, we do the applications, we do all that stuff. But you are the qualified individuals. You're the folks that meet those strenuous requirements. You're the people who practice out there all the time. You are the people who the public relies on as being qualified. So that's your part. Being qualified, remaining up to date, being part of this organization, attending all the presentations and continuing to learn is key to staying qualified. So this is your responsibility there. The next thing we're supposed to do as an agency is compliance with applicable laws and rules. So I have a department that does investigations. We set out the laws and rules and the guidance for all of you to follow. But it's your job to know the rules and laws and comply with them. So understanding what your obligations and requirements are and following those laws and rules, reporting violations or potential violations to the agency so we can look into them, that's your mission. I have 32 people here in Austin, and that's it. You see all the designs, all the RFQs, RFPs, all the specs. You work with subcontractors, you work with everybody. You see everything going on. In a way, you're the deputies for the agency. You let us know when something's up. So once again, my mission, it's y'all's mission too. And the last thing, part of our mission is education about engineering and surveying. We do it through things like this kind of presentation, right? We come around, we visit when we can. If not, we talk with you online and we share. But it's your job to stay educated and up to date, right? Hopefully everyone, well, no one will agree that when they finished going to school, that they know everything they were ever going to need in their entire career, and they don't need to learn anything else. You have to stay up to date on the latest codes, the latest technologies, the latest everything that's happening, or you won't be effective. You can't protect the health, safety, and welfare. I would posit that you can't design things the way you did 20, 30 years ago. You just can't. And so you have to stay up. That's your job there. It's our job to provide some of that. So that's a very important part of this. So once again, a long-winded way of saying, this is my mission statement, but we can't do it without you, and you're really the focus of all of this. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about history of the agency, and many of y'all, if you've been a PE for just a couple of years or more, or if you've ever seen one of our webinars, you've heard this story. So I'm going to try and keep it a little bit short. But it's not really about the story itself. It's about what does it mean. And it's a very prime example of protection of health, safety, and welfare, how little things added together can go wrong. And when they do, how they can be dangerous, and the importance of engineering in the grand scheme of things. So this is a story about the New London school explosion. Many of y'all have heard about this, but if you haven't, here it is. In the 30s, Northeast Texas, there was a big bustling town. Right now, it's a very small little town. You can literally drive through it and miss it. There's almost nothing there. But if you have a chance, sidebar, visit. They have a wonderful little diner attached to a museum that is all about this event. But at the time, oil and gas discovered in the area, lots of people coming, bringing their families, moving to the area, lots of money, lots of tax revenue, lots of things going on. I did visit the museum, and I learned one thing there. It was the richest school district in the state of Texas in the 30s. So you think of your grand school districts now with the college level football stadiums and all that kind of stuff, that would have been New London at the time. They were supporting areas around them. It was just a big deal. So they had a lot of people, a lot of families, a lot of money, decided to build state-of-the-art school. Well, the school had some features, if you will, that added up in a bad way. The first is under the building itself was designed where there were little voids under the building that weren't ventilated. They weren't accessible. They were just spots under the building in the foundation there where things could accumulate. They had also replumbed the building. They designed it with one kind of heating system, but realized, hey, we've got some natural gas in the area that people are going to flare off or just dump into the atmosphere. Let's see if we can tap into that. So they replumbed the building to be supported by gas, and that system leaked. The third thing that happened is a shop teacher was trying to fix a sander for the students. It had been sparking, and he was trying to work on that. Well, March 18th, 1937, right before the end of the school day, the shop teacher turned on the sander, which sparked, which ignited the natural gas that had been collecting under the building in those voids and blew up the building, killed 300 students and teachers. I don't have to say that it's devastating and horrible and horrific. If you want to know more about it, you can look it up online. Just look up New London School Explosion, it'll all come up. But the point of all this is no one did anything nefarious, if you will. The design was a feature of the building. Okay, they did what they thought was right to replumb the heating system, save money, retrofit the design. The shop teacher was clearly trying to help. Every little thing, good intentions, and it all added up at the wrong time to a disaster. I mention it because some people have said to us over time, we have this grand health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the great state of Texas. And then you think about what you literally do for your job. You do a little bit of this, you do some reports, you do some inspections, you do some small things. You don't think, how is this impacting people? Well, engineering systems, as you know, in the big picture are complicated. You think of a bridge, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, and many, many people touch that design and the construction and the inspection, all the things that go into it. If everybody made a mistake, even a tiny one, it can all add up and have the whole thing come down. Not every failure is because of one giant error. There's little bits, a little bit of slack, a little bit of, well, no one will notice, or that doesn't really matter much. It can, and it does. This is a prime example of a horrific outcome of that. So everything we do as engineers is important, no matter what it is you're doing every day. So we have to achieve to the highest level of our competency and quality all the time, because you never know what it is that's going to unzip when it all lines up the wrong way. So that's a little bit grandiose, but that's really the truth. You have to keep that in mind all the time. Health, safety, and welfare is paramount. So back to the New London, and this happened, devastating to the state and everyone. the legislature had to act, and they implemented a licensing process that was actually in place in several other states. Texas hadn't adopted it yet, and they created the Board of Engineers. They created the PE license to regulate the public health, to regulate the practice of engineering, as it relates to the public there. Most people assume when they go to a school that it's all fine. When you go into a building, it's fine. When you turn on the water tap, it's fine. When you drive over a bridge, you drive on a road, you turn on the power, it all works. And in the United States, it does for the most part. But I mean, very rarely does anything go wrong. That's due to this system and all your hard work. So once again, a lot of stuff to unpack on this slide, but that's really the crux of this whole thing. And that's what I think this story means to me. Pictures worth 1,000 words. There's the school. There's the school. It wasn't a fire. It wasn't a one little bang in an outbuilding and everybody goes, what's that? It lifted the school up, threw it all over the place and dropped it back down. So it's devastating to think about. But I just wanted to share that kind of thought with everybody. Since the 30s, when they wrote the law, they had two main requirements: to license people and an enforcement of the Practice Act. Same it is over 80 years later. The words have changed a little bit, but if you go back and look at the original law in 1937, a lot of it looks just like it does today. There's some fundamental things that you have to do, and we're still doing those. In 03, we started requiring firm registration. People have asked us, why is that? Well, people were apparently hanging out the shingle and offering engineering services and having no engineers. So that's a bad thing. So when the public can hire an engineering company, they have PEs. It's real. 05, starting trying continuing ed. I do want to mention this. People ask, why do I got to do this and what's the deal? The point of continuing ed is not to make you take 15 hours and sit through classes. It's to find things that will further your knowledge and further your career. So look for those things, find value-added stuff. I know this organization provides valuable information, and there's lots of stuff out there you can find that's going to make your career better, up-to-date, new information and that kind of stuff. That keeps your competency up, that keeps you qualified, that's how you protect the safety of people. And education has been one of our primary functions. I've been ED for 10 years, and a little more than that, we've started doing continuing ed all the time. So. Other thing, some numbers here just for the history. The board's been around since 37, and we've licensed over 138,000 PEs since then. So those are the PE numbers. So you may know your PE number in your head. Many of you will probably have 5-digit numbers, but there's 6-digit ones running around out there. We're heading toward 150. And I think that's a wonderful celebration. I think it was just a couple of years ago we celebrated number 100,000, but it was quite a number of years ago. So every year it's growing, and that's an important part there. Currently over 68,000 PE licenses issued in the state of Texas. That's more than half the folks, or around half the folks that have ever been licensed are licensed right now. On the land surveying side, some of you may not know, here's a little of their history. The first board was established in 1919, and it was related to public lands owned by the state. They started doing other surveying practice in 1955. This would be things like regulating surveyors that you would see on a more common basis. Merged both those agencies together in 79, and then merged due to a Sunset Act in the legislation last year with the Board of Engineers. One other tidbit about the merging with the engineering and the surveying board: if you think of the organization NCEES, the group that makes the tests and things like that, that's actually made up of all the different state boards around the United States. And one of those E stands for engineering, and the S stands for surveying. It has been the Board of Engineering and Surveying for many decades. So this model of combined engineering surveying boards is actually more common than not in the US. So when Sunset looked at it, they said, well, we've got a ton of PEs, as you see, almost 70,000. There are 2,800 registered surveyors. They said we can kind of leverage that and work together. So we're the Board of Engineers and Surveyors now. Over 6,800 RPLSs since the 50s, and 2,800 surveyors right now. Not as many as you might think, and we always need more. So if you know people that are interested in surveying, let us know. One other fact, we have almost 400 to 500 RPLS PEs, people who do both. So that is a totally possible thing to do. All right, a little bit about professional licensing. Why did they choose that as a solution to the New London thing and public protection? Well, obviously it protects the public by setting competence standards. If you think about it, the public doesn't really know what we do. They know the outcome of those things, but they don't know all the stuff that we do. And it's difficult for a member of the public in general to determine when an engineer is competent or not. I'll use a personal example with my wife and other things. When you start talking about what it is engineers do, we get excited and other people get glassy-eyed and confused. They know it's hard, it has a lot of math and a lot of science, but it's difficult for someone to be able to determine if someone's competent in a certain area. So competence, that's what we set the standards for. Ethical expectations, these are the choices that people make. A quick comment about competence and ethics. We see more violations related to ethical violations than we do competence-related errors. People are trained in how to do calculations, how to do analyses, and all the tech stuff. People are trained and should understand ethics too, but when it comes down to it, those are choices. And to paraphrase my kids in school, when people make bad choices, bad things happen. And an error is an error in the calculation, but if you knew the right answer and chose to do it wrong anyway, that's even more dangerous, I think, to some extent than that calculation error. And then professionalism is another key part of licensing. So this is a good solution to the issue of protecting the public. One thing that many people recognize, but it's important for a lot of the public to understand why engineering, why PEs exist. There's lots of professions that are licensed, right? Doctors, nurses, psychologists, lawyers, teachers, engineers, surveyors, lots of things. And some of them have direct impact on health, safety, and welfare. A doctor or a nurse can do a procedure incorrectly, make the wrong prescription or diagnosis, and someone can die. Absolutely. Very hands-on. If a system or some engineering project is done incorrectly, you can have a lot of people impacted. Bridges can come down, roadway failures, power outages, water treatment plant failures. You can have thousands of people involved in these things if a dam breaks. Just think of the impact all these things engineering systems have. So the impact and safety is undeniable for engineering. I'm going to skip this one because it pretty much is just straightforward about how it protects the public. I share these each year, but it kind of helps people understand. Most people don't know what engineers do. They don't even recognize they're around half the time. But when they do, they do think a lot of positive things about engineering, and that's your work out there, and we got to keep that up. So one is having a PE license or any kind of license, but what does the public think about these things? Some people will say we don't need the system, but I think at the end of the day we do, and the public recognizes that. They see when you're a PE or have a license that it's valuable, demonstrates accountability, expertise, and does ensure safety. It's not considered burdensome, frivolous, or unnecessary. It's something important that people look for. Are you qualified to do your job? And they recognize that. This one's kind of fun. It's called a word cloud. The bigger the word, the larger the number of responses. And the survey question, they asked 500 people is what are the first 3 words when that come to your mind when you think of engineers? And the public responded back: professional, educated, technical, intelligent, smart, analytical, all kinds of stuff. So while they may not think about engineering all the time, when they do think of engineers, they recognize that it's a complicated field. You have to be highly educated and competent to do those things. So this is a very positive reflection of what people, when they interact with all of you and everything you do, they see that competence and they know that. They know it's hard to do. They know they can't do it themselves, and people who do undertake this profession are competent in what they do. So that's a great reflection, and we need to keep that bar high. I said ethics was a key part, right? The choices that are made, as well as the last one about competence. So ethics is an interesting measure to get, and in this case, Gallup, the pollsters, you've heard of them before, the Gallup polls. Well, they do, amongst their many tasks, they do one about ethics, and they do it every year. We have data from 2019 here, and the question is, they give a big list of professions, and they say, how would you rank their honesty and ethical standards? So on a scale of 1 to 5, with 4 and 5 being high and very high, I gathered up all the data from the different professions, looked at highs and very highs, and then ranked them. Engineers are in the top 5. There is more to this. Well, there's more to this list. I'm not putting it on here because I didn't want to dog on anybody. But the main point is that engineers are in the top 5 nationwide of all the different professions. And the report did point out something I found very interesting. All the rest of them are medical. It's the only non-medical profession ranked at the highest level. And once again, this is a reflection on what you do and how you do it. When people think of people who are doing the right thing for the right reasons, it's engineers. And so while I don't want to throw my shoulder out patting us on the back, it's important to recognize that what you do is important and the public sees that. They know that. So keep doing what you're doing, keep striving and keeping these things in mind. It sets us apart, and it's incredibly important for keeping people safe. So keep up the good work. So competence, I don't really need to explain what that is, except the one thing I want to point out at the bottom of this slide is practicing in your area of competence. That's a rule citation, so it's real fun to read, but it's as short as we could possibly make it and as direct as it can possibly be. Engineers shall practice only in their area of competence. Okay, if you're a civil engineer and you're an expert at that, that's what people hire you for. That's the knowledge they expect, and that's where you're competent. If you're a civil engineer and you're excellent at that and you're asked to do an electrical design, you're not necessarily competent in that. Practicing in that is not much different than a person who doesn't know what they're doing at all. So you're not protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So stay in your circle, if you will. Now, that doesn't mean that once you've drawn the circle at a college, I'm going to be a civil. It doesn't mean you can't learn things. Of course you can. And your circle can get bigger. You can have 2 or 3 circles. We acknowledge that, and we have a system for all of that stuff. But it's very important that you do practice in your area of competency. And even if someone comes up and goes, hey, you're a PE, right? And I need this out by Friday. And I know you didn't work on it, and it's really not your area, but I just need a stamp to get it past the city. Don't do that. You taking responsibility for a thing you didn't do, you're giving the impression that it's all okay, when in actuality you don't know what's going on. And it can move forward and have catastrophic impacts on the public. And at the end of the day, you're the one that said it was fine. That's not the point of this exercise. So once again, just to remind everybody, stay in your area of competence. Ethics. I've already described a little bit about why it's important and how we have more issues related to ethics and administrative things than actual technical errors. Conflicts of interest are a big way things can go wrong. You know the right answer, but someone has come in. You've got another driver. You know, like, well, my brother-in-law, he supplies stuff, and maybe it's not the best stuff, but he's family, so we'll use that in the design. Well, that's not the point. The point is to do the best thing for everybody and for safety. Faithful agent, when people hire you, they expect you to have their interest in mind. Give a dissenting opinion. It's hard. It's complicated. It's messy sometimes. But if you know what you think is the right thing to do from an engineering perspective, you have to raise that voice up. Be aware of obligations to be aware of violations of the Act. This means just because you're living a good life, and you can't let everyone else in the office be a dumpster fire. If you see things that are going on, you have to let us know, you have to let them know, you have to try and work with that to make that happen. You're not protecting the public health, safety, and welfare in the greater if you're just in your cube, keeping your blinders on and ignoring the dangers around you. So let us know.
Is that the see something, say something rule?
It's pretty much, right, yes. And most of it actually does get handled directly. You can go over and tell an engineer that you're working with, a subcontractor, or someone you're working on a project, and say, hey, I'm not sure that's right. And I can't speak for all engineers, but I don't think they want to make mistakes either. So if you catch something, it gets fixed, the world moves on, right? If it needs to be a complaint with the board, that works too. But most of the time you can just say, hey, I don't think this is the way it's supposed to go. And most people will try and fix it. Okay, if they don't, we're here, right? That's the system. But how does this protect the public? We're expected to know the right things to do and do it at the right time for the right reasons, right? That's an expectation. Professionalism. Some people say it's an overlap with the ethics piece, but it's a subset or a side set. Communication, honesty, clarity, being not misleading. I'm going to tell a little story about that for just a minute or two. This is a personal thing. Once again, I'm projecting, but please understand where I'm coming from. Engineers in any sector of or branch of engineering has a very specific set of knowledge and lingo and words and terms and things we know super well and are very confusing to the public. We use terms that most people would consider to be synonymous as very independent, discrete things that are very, very different. I'm sure there's a million terms in asphalt that most people just see as roads. So if you ask the person, a client, the city of whatever, hey, do you want A, B, or C? To you, that's night, day, and they're very different. Some people are like the middle one. They don't really understand what the deal is. And I bring that up as you run with that. You go, great, that was a decision, off we go. Well, at the end of the project or somewhere in there, someone comes and goes, what are you doing? That's not what I wanted. So we get complaints. The engineer didn't do what I said. The engineer's wrong. The engineer made errors, all these things. And they come back with this email or this text and said, well, they said. Well, and so we think it's very clear. If you get glassy-eyed people or someone making random choices or things that don't make sense, try and help them understand a little bit better. That can help prevent complaints. And so one of the difference we discuss here at the agency is misleading someone, meaning being deceitful, or allowing people to be misled and confused. Both can end up in a complaint, but in some cases you can handle it on the front side. I don't mean talk down to people, but just say, hey, do you understand the difference between A and B? If you've got a sophisticated client, ask away, rock on. If you got someone who doesn't seem to know what they're doing, help them through. That's one of your obligations, to make sure everything's going well. So I just bring that up because it can get really confusing to people a lot. So we're expected to be complete and correct in our practice. I'll move through this one here in a matter of time. Complaints, I've already mentioned those. We handle about 600 a year for the 70,000 people we've got. We handle a lot of things with voluntary compliance. This means once we get a complaint, we work with the engineer to make sure they're not going to do it again and get things fixed. It doesn't always end up in a $1 million fine or anyone going to prison, but the idea is that we're supposed to fix the issue, and we do. And one thing that's coupled with that that's not on here is we have an incredibly low recidivism rate. And that means people who have more than one violation over time, people who come back. And so we're up 99.9 something number of people who never have 2 violations. So once we get with an engineer, we straighten up the situation, it moves on, and we never hear from them again except for renewal time. So that's a good process, I think. 10% are dismissed approximately. That means you've seen something out there that makes you ask a question, the complaint comes in, we look at it, and it doesn't mean it's a violation. I would much rather have my folks do investigations and have it turn out to be dismissed than you deciding on your own, hey, this probably isn't that big a deal, and it turns out it is. So that failure mode is worse than having us go through the process. So please let us know if you see something, and as you see something, say something. We also encourage you, it doesn't have to be a complaint. It can be a phone call, well, or an email that says, hey, is this something that's all right? Can we do this? Is this the way the rules work? About half our correspondence is checking, clarifying, and educating. We'd much rather do that on the front side as opposed to diving straight into the issue, errors happening, and things going wrong. So if you have a question, ask us. We'll be happy to answer it. The fines, as you're aware, can be reprimands all the way up to revocation, $5,000 a day for engineers, and a bunch of other stuff. So when things go wrong, we will take action, and just want to share that with everybody. We also ask people to take ethics courses, technical courses, and do other sorts of things as a result of violations. You see them sometimes in our online newsletters. You get that little section where you can click and see who's done what. And I know people click it and they go to see if they have a buddy or someone else on the list that they know, so they can call them up and say, hey, I saw you on the list. That's not the point. The point is read the little paragraph and find out what the violation was. I've had more than one person come up after presentations like this and say, I did not know that was something we can't do. And they fix it at their company, or they learn for themselves. So there's a lot of learning in there. It's not just going, hey, Jim, I saw your name in the newsletter. That's not the point. Talked about the newsletter. A little bit about preventing complaints, keeping an eye on the clock here. Communication between all parties. I mentioned a little bit about communicating, but these were some things we found are great ways to not be involved in a violation. Keeping communication open. As I mentioned before, sometimes things are messy. Communication between a client can be difficult. The project starts getting off the rails and it starts being complicated. Keep the communication open and working towards solutions. Talk about the hard stuff, get through the bigger project. If you can, that's the way you want to go. That cuts down on a complaint formally being filed, okay? One thing we're seeing more of these years, and it's a qualitative more of, I don't have a number, but it seems to be more and more, and also works with electronic communications, is I'll use another term, ghosting is what I see people do. What this essentially has to do is you start on a project, maybe you've taken some payment or you've undertaken the first part, it becomes complicated, messy, or some way gets going bad, and then people stop. They don't answer texts, they don't answer emails, they don't finish the project, they just go away. Okay, you cannot answer your cell phone, you can do all these things. That's an express route to a violation. It's unethical, it's unprofessional, it's dangerous, you've taken money for things you didn't do. There's all kinds of reasons why that's a bad idea, yet people are making that decision more and more, and I don't know why. So keep that in mind. That's a bad thing. Don't do that. Obviously, if someone doesn't get satisfaction by working directly with you, they'll get hold of us. If you disappear, and you see a question here.
Okay. Let's see. Once a complaint is filed and given a case, how long does it generally take to get a determination? And are there quarterly updates during this process?
There are quarterly updates. We have to send a letter. The letter is pretty minimal. It does say that the case is still ongoing. we can't get into the back and forth. We'll communicate when we need to. The average time is a difficult number because if it's a simple, straightforward, basic case, it can be in the weeks to month and a half kind of thing. If it's more complicated with lots of stuff, they can go into the years type deal. Obviously, if there's attorneys involved and there's other sorts of hearings, it can go through procedural delays and things like that. So there's quite a spectrum based on the complexity and the number of items. So I don't want to have this be a non-answer, but an average in this case is a lot of things mixed together. We try and get the right answer, and so that's how we work to get that. So the next thing I was going to mention is contracts, and this doesn't mean go hire 20 lawyers and have a 1,000-page contract for every little project. Well, you can do that if that's the way you want to do it. The idea here is write something down. I totally understand how business is done. There's handshake business, there's repeat business with repeat clients. There's a lot of stuff that's an emergency, that's a quick phone call. Hey, Lance, I need you to come out and check this out. Can you get the inspection report done by Friday? You say, sure, man, no problem. You roll the trucks and it's getting done, right? Totally done. And everything usually works fine. You provide the work product on time. It's got everything everybody needed. Billing works and the world works great through this thing. The problem is if there's no documentation of these agreements, it can be difficult when the wheels come off. Things take longer than you thought. Well, that person gets upset. It didn't come in on Friday. You didn't have it for 3 weeks. It turns out the price was way higher than they thought, or it didn't meet whatever they thought they were getting, right? There's lots of things that get weird about it. So we recommend some kind of something in writing, even the most minimalistic. That phone call comes in, hey, can you do the thing? You say, sure. You say price just like it was. Yes, sir, I'll get out there and get it done. Shooting back a quick text or an email at some point in the day said, hey, I'm on that project just like we talked about this afternoon. It's $1,500, blah, 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 whatever the deal is. Capture it. That way later on, if someone comes to say you didn't do what we agreed to, you can say, well, here's what we agreed to. And so that kind of thing. The only reason I bring that up is we have cases that are he said, she said, and it makes it complicated for you. It makes it complicated for everybody. The last one is calculations and designs, and I hate bringing this up, and I do every presentation. But essentially, you're hired to do engineering work and to do the analysis and all the stuff that goes into it. Actually do it. Keep the stuff as long as you can. In the digital world, you can capture that and just save it somewhere on an external or internal drive, all that kind of stuff. I bring this up because there's tons of work that are inspections from a truck. The person never went to the site. The person did a drive-by, if they even left their desk. They do all these things. That's not what you were hired for. And when there's a failure of the thing that you said was fine, we come back and say, hey, did you go to the site? Well, did you take pictures? No. Do you have notes? No. Did you even do the calculations? No. Well, that's a lot of reasons you should be able to understand why that's a bad thing. Do people do it? Absolutely. So here's me saying do the work that you're supposed to be doing. Really close on time, so I'm going to skip a couple things here. It's in the slides, and you'll have it. I can send them forward, and you guys can share those. The last thing is a little bit about the merger. A year ago, we were tasked with merging engineering and surveying together. September 1 of this year was the end of that time period, so I'm going to stop calling it the merger, and essentially we are the Board of Engineers and Land Surveyors, period, full stop, it's done. So all that has happened. We're still tidying up a couple little things, but for all practical purposes, we now handle all of that. The impact, people have asked me, so how does this affect my engineering license? It does not. That's pretty much it. It had a bigger impact on the surveying side. A lot of things had to change through the statute and rules and other stuff that's going on. But your engineering license, besides the fact that your pocket card now has a different logo on it, everything else is pretty much the same. Same agency, same people, same process, same everything. One thing I do want to mention, it's a little funny, but people have asked. Engineers cannot do surveying and surveyors cannot do engineering just because the agencies merged. People thought, well, this is going to happen. It didn't. There's a PE license. There's an RPLS license. Both have independent qualifications, and we handle them completely separately. If you want to do surveying and you're a PE, pass the qualifications and we'll issue you a license for surveying. Same thing, if you're a surveyor and you want to do engineering, become a PE. There you go. But it does not mean that you all of a sudden got magical powers just because an agency merged. You did not become competent in the other area. Once again, I felt the need to say that there. So with that, there's a lot of things going on. We talked about computer-based testing. I want to thank you for attending the webinar, listening to me go on today. Interesting one thing with the numbers. Last year, we had talked to 26,000 people at 150 something events. This year with the pandemic, we thought this is going to have an impact. It's gone down slightly, but we've talked to 25,000 people.
Wow.
So thank you for making that change with us. Thanks for inviting me today to speak with you. I wish you well out there. Everyone stay safe. And with that, I will stop talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lance. That's awesome. At least by my count, we had almost 140 people on at one point.
Wow.
So,
well, thank you all for bearing with me today.
Yeah, that's great. Can we get a copy of the presentation to post? Is that possible?
I will send you the slides when I get home tonight.
Okay, perfect. I think we picked up all the questions as we were going. I answered a couple. They were just wanting some specific stuff, so we did that. So, hey, just wanted a big thank you for taking the time today to go ahead and do that and spend an hour with us and talk to our folks. I know you're appreciate you taking the effort to go into the office and do all that sort of stuff, and it's a big deal for us. And from TXAPA, thank you, Lance. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and hopefully next year I'll see you in person.
Yeah, we can't wait. We appreciate everybody being here. Again, our focus is on quality in everything that we do. And in the meantime, until we see you again, be safe out there. Ever forward, everybody.